So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is the Vulgar Marxist, and welcome to the second part of How to Argue with Nazis. Now, I will admit I'm slightly concerned because having been drinking orange juice for most of the past 2 days, my throat is very raw, so this is not going to be the same voice quality I would normally like in a video. But again, I want to see this done. Now, secondly, we have had to split this into two parts. Hooray, trailer crashing into the back of my tractor as someone loads cardboard into it. We have had to split this into two parts because Windows Movie Maker, keeps glitching out every time I get to the end of this video. Just deletes the whole video. Like, I'll try editing something and the whole video is gone. So we are going to try doing this in two parts. This second part may very well not get posted. It may just be a permanent glitch at the end of this video that I can't work around, but we are at the very least going to try and get the whole thing done, not in one go, we already flubbed that, in two goes. So, as I said, let us proceed.
I do worship nature in that I'm humble. When I see the mighty, awesome power of nature, and believe me, I've seen some terrific power of nature, the typhoons off Japan during the war, earthquakes. I've been through some tremendous cataclysms on this earth, and compared to them, the atomic bomb is like a firecracker, nothing. And when you start to think of the enormity of space, our spacemen are just going around at the very bottom levels of space. There's no place yet. There are over 100 million planets where life, just like here, could exist. And in the face of that awesome probability, not possibility, probability, I say it's ridiculous to be egocentric and say we are the center of all things. Everything turns around us.
Now, I'm going to not refer back to the previous video. So we are going to start noting statements again here. It's not hard. The guy repeats the same stuff through the whole video, so I really don't need to reach back too much. But I would like you to please just note that he has said that the National Socialist Party is humble before nature, okay? Now, what does it mean to be humble before something? It means to say, you don't know better than this thing. You don't know how to do something better than the existing process. So, keep in mind, he has just said he does not know how to produce children better than the natural process of evolutionary selection. That is, random actors randomly selecting partners based upon their available information.
We Nazis are humble. When I look at nature and realize how ignorant and small and feeble and weak and little we are, Nazism is a philosophy of nature, a way of looking at the world. And as I pointed out, we believe in tribalism. We don't think we're above that. We think that you've got to have pride in your family, pride in your race, pride in your nation. That's not something to laugh at. Patriotism and pride in family and pride in race is something we should be proud of and cultivate, work on, not get rid of.
Pride, 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 pride. What did we hear not 30 seconds ago? That he was humble. How can you both be humble and prideful at the same time? You cannot. Either you believe you are inferior to a thing, or you believe you are superior to a thing, or you believe you are equal to the thing. To be humble is to say you're inferior. To be proud is to say you're superior. I do not know if there is an equivalent term for saying you are equal. Possibly to be realistic is to say you are equal. But this man is creating a dichotomy in the space of a minute. where on one hand he is declaring that he is filled with pride, and on the other hand he is filled with humility. You cannot be both of those things. Pick one, sir.
Finally, we believe in morals. We believe in the traditions of goodness, virtue. Now I told you something about what we are, but I'll do as good as I can in telling you what I think our enemies are. And our enemies, make no mistake about it.
Is anyone with enough brain cells to know what a false dichotomy or a non sequitur are? No? That's not your enemy? Okay. Well, let's hear who you think your enemies are. This should be entertaining.
Are the Marxists. The philosophy of Marxism, I believe, is the enemy of all humanity. It's the reverse of humanity.
The idea that individuals should be free to benefit from the work they themselves have performed without having to pay a substantial portion of that work to someone who has not assisted in it is the enemy of humanity. We're going to get back to this point later. This is going to get really interesting before the end, but I want you to keep what he just said in mind. The idea that the common man should benefit from the labor he himself has performed is the enemy of humanity.
We say communism itself is the most vicious, antisocial doctrine the world has ever known, and here's why. They completely deny the very basis on which any human order can exist at all. Without humans, or at least without civilized humans, you certainly can't have human order. And the communists say they don't believe in race.
Again, I would like you to note what he has just done there, okay? Without race, there can be no human order. That is what he has said. Without the construction of groups of people based upon either, depending on your definition, their genetic heritage or the culture to which they have adopted themselves based upon their material conditions, there can be no human order. Now let's examine this for a second. First of all, can a group of people survive without adopting to their material conditions? No, obviously not. So if we use the term race, that is a series of adaptations to material conditions, thus forming a culture, as our definition of race, then what he has said is theoretically true. A group of people cannot survive without adopting to their material conditions. But in this case, the adaptations of pygmies, Aboriginal Australians, people in the mountain of the Himalayas are just as good as the adaptations of Europeans. Not superior or inferior in any way. Europeans lived in a different material condition and adapted differently to it. There is no reason to judge the adaptations a group of people has performed as superior or inferior if they are living in different material conditions. Therefore, when he talks about race, he cannot be talking about the material conditions in which people live. He must be talking about something else, or this statement makes no sense.
They believe in absolute equality. The pygmies, the aborigines of Australia, everybody. Send them, let them all come to Carlton, and they'll all write arias and books, and the cannibals will be producing the music and verses. That's all you have to do is educate them. And this simply is not true. This results in chaos, social chaos, which is what we have now.
Okay, first of all, non sequitur. There is no reason that, while being staggeringly distasteful, cannibalism would prevent you from writing good music. There is no reason that someone being short would prevent them from writing a good book. This does not follow. But more than that, communists do not believe in absolute equality. The mantra of communism is from each according to their ability to each according to their need. The needs of a 4-year-old child are going to be different from the needs of a 20-year-old adult. The needs of an able-bodied person will be different from the needs of someone who is paraplegic. The ability of workers of all kinds are completely different. So no, not only do communists not believe in absolute equality, even if we did, the process of thought here is still completely and utterly wrong.
They don't believe in enterprise. They don't believe that people should work for themselves. They believe that the state should come and tell them what to do. They don't believe in private property. They don't believe that you can keep the fruits of your production.
And I would like to now refer you back to the start of the video. The purpose of communism is that those who have performed productive labor, i.e. the workers, should keep the entirety of the fruits of their production without having to sacrifice a significant portion of it to the capitalists who have done no physical labor, who have helped in no way with the act of production other than leveraging their fabulous wealth to purchase a factory which the workers had to build, on land which the workers had to clear, with bricks which the workers had to fabricate. Nothing. The capitalists have done nothing but wield phenomenal wealth. It is precisely to secure to the workers the fruits of their own labor that the communist movement arises. And yet this person says, oh, you don't believe in private property, therefore you don't want people to control their production. No, we do want people to control their production. It is precisely to guarantee to the workers their production, the production they themselves have worked to create, that we exercise our efforts. So again, this person is either staggeringly stupid or is deliberately strawmanning his opposition.
They don't have, above all, they have no spiritual ideal. We say the only thing that's worth protecting with your life is ideals and your family, your race, and your nation.
In this, Mr. Rockwell is quite correct. A system based upon materialism has no place for ideology or spiritual superstition. We are not interested in flights of fancy or mythical whims. We are interested in what guarantees shelter, food, and clothing to all. However, upon his second point, he is utterly wrong. A nation in which the public is grossly and openly exploited is a meaningless thing. A race, if you will acknowledge the concept, which benefits a tiny handful at the top, is again a meaningless thing and not worthy of protection. Family, perhaps, we might concede is worthy, but again only if it exists to benefit all the members of all the families. If it harms some and helps others, why then should we acknowledge or recognize it as worthy of our subservience, our protection, our endorsement? It is not. And the assertion that it is blatant and open superstition.
And twice in my lifetime, I've been called upon to go out and risk getting killed. And I saw a lot of other young men doing this. Young fanatics that they made out of it, by the way. They made us real fanatic haters of the Germans and fanatic haters of the Japanese. Nobody protested that that was bad to be a fanatic when we were fighting those Japs. You know, I assure you we all were.
I will agree that it is remarkable that World War II is one of the few wars wherein wide-scale public protest did not occur. The Civil War, World War I, Vietnam, all had counter-protests. So no, in that particular conflict, no one objected. However, in very nearly every single other conflict in U.S. history, wide-scale public approbation of the war has occurred. The public understands that in a democratic society, having a group of radical fanatics armed with weapons is horrifyingly bad, and generally will result in the degradation, if not the destruction, of the democratic principles they value. Now, I would ask, sir, obviously he can't respond, he's decades dead, but I would ask, what value is a nation that does not represent the interests of the public at large? And how are the leaders to represent those interests if the democratic checks and balances necessary to express them do not exist?
Apparently, the communists, if you remember when they first got in power in Russia, they are against morals. They had free love, no morals at all, everything was have a ball. And the result was they almost tore Russia to pieces. They just fell apart.
No record of the Russian Revolution I have read mentions this. None. First of all, communists do have morals, just not morals based in religion. The idea of collective labor is that each and every member of society has a duty to society based upon the fact that they cannot produce all of their shelter, food, and clothing themselves, to produce, in assistance with others, the shelter, food, and clothing everyone requires. This is, in essence, a moral duty based upon materialism. It isn't based on some abstract dictates invented by some tripping guy in a cave, but rather the material reality each and every single person in society faces. Let me repeat again. The morality of a communist society is based upon the fact that no one person is capable of producing for themselves all of the shelter, all of the clothing, and all of the food they require for their own subsistence. Only by acting in concert with others can any individual survive, and this in turn produces a reciprocal standard of morality all must follow.
Now, if you'll notice, they are almost puritanical in Russia. In order to make the thing work, they've had to go back to the very principles of tribalism which we're advocating. You can't work society with a communist pipe dream.
I would like to once again point out that this person continually conflates tribalism and morality. Sir, the cannibals you continually use as a scaremonger or a boogeyman are tribalist. The pygmies you refer to with such degenerate terms are tribalist. Simply because you are tribalist does not mean you are moral. In fact, tribalism dictates a double morality. That is, the standard you set for your tribe is completely different from the standard you set for everyone else. That is not morality. That is the absence of morality. Morality is a universal standard set for everyone, regardless of whether they are in your tribe or not.
Civilization is based on self-sacrifice, on the willingness of men to go out and die for what they believe in. When you get rid of that self-sacrifice, you get anarchy. Civilization is built because I am willing to give up something for my family. And the family is willing to give up something in order to have the town succeed. And the town is willing to give up something so the state can be in business. And the state is willing to give up something so the nation can succeed. Self-sacrifice is the first principle of civilization.
I would like to run through the chain he just made, and then we're going to discuss it. The individual, in this case a man, gives up something for the family to succeed. The family gives up something for the town to succeed. The town gives up something for the region to succeed. The region gives up something for the nation to succeed. And it is interesting to me that he never specifies what this is. Why is giving up something necessary here? I'd like to stop and explore this, please. What is being given up? I mean, obviously, the man going off to war is giving up his life, but I very much doubt the town or the state are giving up their lives. They don't have lives. They're a government controlled by elites, or at the best case, democratically elected officials. So what is being given up here? Resources, effort, energy, time, work. But that brings us to a question. If what am I giving up, what I am giving up, is physical effort, that is, the hours of my labor, why am I not compensated accordingly? Why do I not get a proportional return on what I have given up? Why is it necessary that my effort accrue to someone else? Let's think about this for a second, logically. If I am sacrificing, and we're going to do this in calories, okay? If I am sacrificing 1,000 calories to raise my children when they are young, do they not then sacrifice 1,000 calories to care for me when I am old? If I sacrifice 1,000 calories to my wife so she can stay home and cook dinner, does she not sacrifice 1,000 calories cooking the dinner, cleaning the house? But then, where is the sacrifice? And I'm quite serious in this point. If I receive in return from my family as much as I give to them, how then is this a sacrifice? Yet he is explicitly stated, the man is sacrificing for the family. Where? There is no sacrifice to the family, not unless he's no longer there anymore. But let's dispense with that for the time. The family sacrifices for the town. Okay. The family is expending calories to benefit an institution and receiving nothing in return. Who then benefits? Is the family not part of the town? Who is gaining these 1,000 calories if not the people who live in the town? I mean, if I spend 1,000 calories to build a park, I benefit as much from the park as anyone else does. If I spend 1,000 calories to pave a road, to hold a church picnic, to build a church, to build a town hall, to do anything of material benefit to this thing we call a town, I have as much right to enjoy them as anyone else does. My calories are returned to me each time I go to the park, each time my children go to the school, each time we attend the brunch we all work together to organize. The only way this would be a sacrifice is if some individuals in the town accrued a benefit disproportional to their contribution. But then that's not a sacrifice now, is it? That's exploitation. The same is true if we go to the state or the national level. If the town is part of the state, how does the contribution of the town not benefit the town if and only if some receive more than they contribute? How does the benefit of the state not benefit the state if and only if some receive more than they contribute? What this gentleman is saying here is not that sacrifice is necessary to civilization. What he is saying is that exploitation is necessary to civilization. And that is a very interesting point. That is a very, very interesting statement. The foundational assumption of fascism is that the sole purpose of civilization is to facilitate the exploitation of the weak by the strong, and without that purpose, civilization not only need not, but cannot exist. What a horrible view of the world. What an absolutely revolting and disgusting way to think about your fellow man. And this person says they are humble. They are humble before nature. This person declares that they value their race, value their family, value their nation, after flatly stating these things exist only to be ruthlessly and cravenly taken advantage of. I am not a vegan or a vegetarian or anything of the kind. But I can tell you right now, I do not value the chicken I ate for dinner, nor the potatoes that I ate with it. To devour something, to destroy something, to use something exclusively for your own purpose, with no regard for it, is not to value it. You can say it's entirely justified in the case of a chicken, or a fish, or a potato. But in the case of other human beings, it is not justified. And again, if you declare other people need not exist except for your benefit, you do not value them.
Communism has got the fanaticism to destroy you, and it's doing it. And unless you can build up a counter-fanaticism for something you believe in positively, you will be destroyed. You are being destroyed.
Recently, there was a report out that among new babies that were born, this happened last year, minorities were now the majority, that whites were officially the minority.
Well, that took all of 15 seconds research to debunk. I mean, seriously, it was a one-year blip in 2016 and immediately reversed itself. And the hilarious part here is it only works if you don't count Hispanics, who are mostly Spanish descent, as white people. So again, I said this last video, I'll say it a second time. Why are people coming from the Iberian Peninsula not white?
And they're boasting about it. Khrushchev just said, America's so liberal, they'll never fight. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but we're going to change that. It won't be quite so liberal.
This is one of the things I like to remind social justice advocates of. When you say we do not need liberalism, you are literally doing the fascist work for them. This will lead to their victory and nothing else. The abolition of liberalism will inevitably result in the victory of fascists. Why? Because they are more willing to use violence than we are. First. And second, because the way you combat bad ideas is not to suppress them. That's how you combat good ideas. The way you combat bad ideas is to drag them kicking and screaming into the light and show exactly how filthy and obnoxious they are. If all you can do is suppress your opponent's ideas, this is usually a very good indicator that the ideas are good, that there is no argument against them. Surely, you do not actually believe the ideas of fascists are good.
After we've had a chance to make America understand what it is and make it conscious of itself and its greatness and its people, and the white race understand that they're worthy of protecting themselves, that they don't have to keep humbling and downgrading themselves while other races are standing up and saying, look at us, how great we are. We keep saying we're ashamed of ourselves for being white. That's a terrible thing. The thing for each race to do is be proud of itself. And the white people and the good people of this country, when they finally realize that they can do that without hurting or being obnoxious to anybody else, they will finally become fanatics to survive, to keep this great country going.
Do European Americans have any reason to be ashamed of their culture? No, not any more than Mongolians or Arab Americans or anyone else does. Very nearly every culture on the planet has, at one point or another, engaged in staggering levels of violence against somebody else. Blaming modern European Americans for the actions of their ancestors is like blaming Hispanics, Mexican Americans, for the human sacrifices conducted by the Aztecs, or is that the Mayans? Whichever one lived in Mexico, around Mexico City. But in any event, no, modern Mexican Americans are not responsible for the human sacrifices very distant and possibly unrelated people conducted. Modern European Americans are not responsible for the actions they did not participate in, were not around for, and likely would have objected to had they been present. So no, there is no reason why European Americans should be ashamed of their culture. That said, this does not mean that European Americans are a race. As we have already discussed in this video, culture is not race. Okay, if we stand from a materialist point, that a culture is nothing more than a series of adaptations to material conditions, then there is no reason to prefer one culture over any other culture. Why? Because the material conditions were different. So what this person is talking about cannot possibly be culture. And he continually conflates culture, genetics, and tribalism. And these are three separate things. You can have a culture and not be tribalist. You can have a genome and not have a culture. You can be a tribe. You're probably going to need a genome. You might not need an independent genome, though. I mean, Germany is such a clusterfuck when you start going back in history. There were hundreds of little principalities, each with their own culture. Because they're in the mountains, for fuck's sake. I mean, you've got valley here, valley there, valley over there. They barely have ever talked to each other. So you had dozens or even hundreds of little pockets of culture. And I'm pretty sure most of them were genetically the same to a greater degree. I don't imagine him saying that the Bavarians and the Prussians were two different races. I can't imagine him saying that the Danish and the Swedes are two different races, or the Finns and the Swedes, or the Nords and the Danish. Certainly there were cultural differences there, but yeah. So you can have a different culture, but not a different genome. So there is no connection here. Culture, genome, tribe, not in any way the same thing, not even remotely the same thing. His entire argument is based upon the conflation of these three things in, I assume, his own mind, and his attempt to conflate these things in the mind of others. And again, we've already argued, if his stance on sacrifice is correct, he is either getting played like a $2 banjo, or is trying to structure a system where those at the top brutalize and exploit those at the bottom by continually hammering about the terrible enemy on the other side of the mountain. This cannot stand. And it will not stand. It will fall apart, inevitably. Sooner or later, someone is going to walk over the mountain and realize no one is there, or the people there are not a threat and never were. The problem with the alien enemy is sooner or later they're either no longer alien or no longer the enemy. And the system built upon this construction lands squarely and obliquely on its face.